The massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council had seen many first contact ceremonies over the past 3,000 years. Ambassador Zixthara of the Ethereal Collective had personally overseen 47 of them. Each followed the same careful pattern that had worked for centuries. A new species would arrive, usually nervous and overwhelmed by the vast scale of galactic civilization. They would listen respectfully to the Council's gentle guidance. They would accept a modest territory assignment and slowly, carefully integrate into the greater community over the course of several hundred years. Today should have been no different. The newest species called themselves humans and came from a small blue planet in an unremarkable spiral arm. Their ships were crude but functional, their technology impressive for such a young civilization. Zixthara had volunteered to be their integration supervisor, expecting this to be a pleasant, routine assignment before her retirement. The human delegation consisted of 3 individuals. The leader introduced herself as Director Sarah Chen, a woman who appeared to be in her 30s by human standards. She had dark hair pulled back efficiently and wore a simple blue uniform with no excessive decoration. Her 2 companions were introduced as Dr. James Foster, a tall man with graying hair, and Colonel Maria Santos, a stern-faced woman with watchful eyes. "Welcome to the Galactic Council," Zixthara said in the traditional opening. Her ethereal form shimmered with calming colors meant to put new species at ease. "We are honored to welcome humanity into our community of civilized worlds." Director Chen smiled brightly. "Thank you so much. We're incredibly excited to be here. We've prepared extensively for this moment." "Excellent," Zixthara replied. "Integration typically takes time. We find that new species benefit from a gradual introduction to galactic society. Perhaps we could begin by assigning you a small sector for colonization? 3 or 4 systems should be sufficient for your initial expansion." Dr. Foster stepped forward slightly. "Actually, we've already identified several promising regions for development. We've prepared detailed proposals for 17 different sectors." Zixthara blinked her large, multifaceted eyes. Most species barely understood the concept of interstellar travel at this stage. 17 sectors? That seems ambitious for a new member. "We like to plan ahead," Director Chen said cheerfully. "We've also prepared some preliminary research on improving hyperspace lane efficiency. Dr. Foster here used to be a traffic engineer before he became our xenobiology specialist. He noticed some potential optimization opportunities in the current galactic transportation network." "Optimization?" Zixthara asked carefully. The galactic transportation network had been carefully developed over millennia. It worked perfectly well. Colonel Santos spoke for the first time, her voice crisp and professional. "We've identified approximately 2,000 bottlenecks in the current system. Most could be resolved with relatively simple infrastructure modifications. We estimate a 37% improvement in overall traffic flow." Ambassador Keith Moore of the Crystalline Union, who had been silently observing from his tall, geometric form, leaned forward with interest. "Your species has been in space for how long?" "About 50 years for serious interstellar capability," Director Chen replied, "though we've been studying the problem of space travel for much longer. We're very solution-oriented as a species." "And you believe you can improve systems that have been refined over 3,000 years?" Keith Moore's crystalline structure flickered with what might have been amusement. "We'd certainly like to try, Doctor," Foster said earnestly. "We've found that fresh perspectives often reveal opportunities that might be overlooked by those too close to a problem. No disrespect intended, of course." Zixthara felt the first stirring of what would later become a familiar sensation when dealing with humans. The feeling that this conversation was moving in directions she hadn't anticipated. "Perhaps we should focus on more immediate concerns. Your homeworld's environmental protection protocols, for instance." "Oh, we've already cleaned that up," Director Chen said casually. "Took us about 20 years once we put our minds to it. Atmospheric carbon is back to pre-industrial levels. Ocean pH is stabilized, and we've actually managed to increase biodiversity beyond historical baselines. We've written up our methods if you're interested." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Environmental restoration typically took species centuries to accomplish, and most never fully succeeded. Colonel Santos continued. We've also established colonies in 43 systems in our local area. All terraforming projects are proceeding ahead of schedule. We've developed some new techniques for atmospheric engineering that might be useful to other species. 43 systems? Zixthara's calm demeanor was beginning to crack. In 50 years? Humans are very good at multitasking, Director Chen explained. We tend to work on many projects at once. It's more efficient that way. Counselor Vaitha, of the ancient hegemony, a being so old his species had helped found the council, spoke with the weight of millennia behind his words. Young species, you must understand that galactic civilization values careful, measured progress. Stability is more important than speed. Director Chen nodded respectfully. We absolutely understand that perspective. Stability is important, but we've found that problems left unsolved tend to get worse over time, so we prefer to address them quickly when possible. What sorts of problems are you referring to? Zixthara asked. Though she was beginning to suspect she might regret the question, Dr. Foster pulled out a small device and projected a holographic display. Well, we've noticed that 17 species in our local galactic region are facing extinction-level events. 6 are dealing with resource depletion. 4 have genetic stability issues. 3 are struggling with environmental collapse. 2 have unsustainable population growth patterns, and 2 are facing threats from cosmic phenomena. These are complex, long-term issues that require careful study, Zixthara said slowly. Oh, absolutely, Director Chen agreed. We've been studying them during our journey here. We think we have workable solutions for most of them. We'd be happy to share our research with the Council. Solutions? Counselor Vaitha's ancient voice carried a note of disbelief. Species have struggled with these problems for thousands of years. Colonel Santos stepped forward again. With respect, sir. Sometimes an outside perspective can identify approaches that haven't been tried. We've had good success with creative problem-solving. Zixthara realized that her comfortable retirement assignment had just become significantly more complicated. In the space of one conversation, this new species had casually claimed to have solved environmental restoration, developed advanced terraforming techniques, optimized galactic transportation networks, and found solutions to extinction-level problems affecting 17 civilizations. Either humans were the most capable species the Council had ever encountered, or they were dangerously deluded about their own abilities. Perhaps, she said carefully, we should schedule some follow-up meetings to discuss these proposals in more detail. Director Chen beamed. That would be wonderful. We're really looking forward to being contributing members of the galactic community. As the human delegation was escorted to their temporary quarters, Zixthara stared at the stack of data crystals they had left behind. Each one contained detailed proposals, research findings, and solution frameworks that should have taken centuries to develop. She had the unsettling feeling that humanity's integration into galactic society was not going to follow the traditional pattern at all. 5 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and Ambassador Zixthara was seriously considering early retirement. What she had hoped would be a peaceful final assignment had become the most challenging position of her long career. She sat in her office, staring at a growing pile of formal complaints, incident reports, and what she could only describe as impossible success stories. The first complaint had come from the Zephyrian Trade Collective just 6 months after humanity's admission to the Council. The crystalline beings were master traders who had dominated galactic commerce for over 1,000 years through their precise, mathematical approach to interstellar shipping. Their complaint was both simple and deeply unsettling. The humans are cutting our shipping times in half, Trademaster Silthus had reported, his crystal structure flickering with agitation. They're using routes through gravitational anomalies that our computers calculate as impossibly dangerous. When questioned, the human trading companies had simply shrugged and explained that they had run some simulations and determined the routes were actually quite safe if you approached them correctly. They had offered to share their navigation data with anyone interested. The Zephyrians had politely declined and immediately filed for exclusive trading rights in 12 systems to avoid competing with human efficiency. The second major incident involved the Kraxon Empire, a proudly warlike species that had been engaged in a bitter territorial conflict with the Moralian Republic for over 500 years. The war had become something of a galactic tradition, with neither side able to claim decisive victory. Entire generations had grown up knowing no other reality than the endless cycle of battles, ceasefires, and renewed hostilities. Then a human diplomatic mission had arrived. The mission was led by Ambassador Rebecca Jang, a soft-spoken woman who had previously worked as a school teacher. She had requested a meeting with both military commanders and had apparently ended the 500-year war in a single afternoon. She just asked why we were fighting. General Karthok of the Kraxan forces had reported in bewilderment. When we explained the complex territorial and historical issues involved, she suggested we share the disputed systems on alternating decades and use the resources jointly for mutual development projects. It was so simple. Admiral Fel-Mies of the Moralian Republic had added, "We felt embarrassed that we had never considered it." The humans offered to help establish a rotating administrative structure and provide neutral mediation if needed. The war officially ended the following week. Both species immediately applied for human-mediated assistance with their post-conflict reconstruction efforts. Zixthera received daily reports of similar incidents. Humans seemed to approach every problem with a combination of genuine helpfulness and complete disregard for conventional wisdom. When told something was impossible, they appeared to hear it as an interesting challenge rather than a limitation. The Vorthak Confederation had declared their home system uninhabitable due to stellar radiation fluctuations that had been gradually increasing for centuries. Human scientists had examined the problem for 3 weeks and then somehow stabilized the star using a technique they called solar acupuncture, which involved placing specialized satellites at precise gravitational points to regulate energy output. The gentle hegemony, a species of peaceful philosophers who had spent millennia searching for the meaning of existence, found themselves in lengthy conversations with human children who apparently solved complex philosophical questions during recess at their schools. 8-year-old Tommy Williams had become something of a celebrity after explaining the solution to the ancient question of being during what humans called show and tell. But perhaps the most unsettling incident had occurred just last month. The Council had received a formal proposal from humanity requesting permission to optimize the galactic government itself. Director Chen, now showing slightly more gray in her hair but retaining all of her enthusiasm, had presented the proposal personally. "We've been observing council proceedings for several years now," she had explained to a packed chamber. "We think there might be some opportunities for improvement." The proposal was terrifyingly comprehensive. Humans had apparently analyzed 3,000 years of council decisions and identified patterns of inefficiency, redundancy, and structural problems that no one else had ever noticed. Their suggested reforms would reduce legislation time from months to days, while improving decision quality by an estimated 43%. Councillor Vitha, whose species had helped design the original council structure, had stared at the proposal for 3 full minutes before speaking. "This would fundamentally change how we govern the galaxy." "Only if you want it to," Director Chen had replied cheerfully. "We're not trying to impose anything. We just noticed some areas where things might work better, and thought we'd share our observations." The proposal was currently under review by a special committee that had been meeting continuously for 4 weeks and still couldn't find any flaws in the human reasoning. Zixthera's thoughts were interrupted by her communication device chiming with an urgent message. She opened it to find a report from the Ethereal Collective's Intelligence Division that made her ethereal form flicker with anxiety. Human space had tripled in size over the past 5 years. Not through conquest or aggressive expansion, but through what could only be described as enthusiastic development. Every system they touched became more productive, more efficient, and somehow more pleasant to live in. Other species were voluntarily joining human-administered space at an unprecedented rate. The report noted that 14 different civilizations had formally requested human assistance with various problems in the past month alone. The humans had cheerfully agreed to help with all of them. "They're not trying to take over," the report concluded. "They're just very good at everything they attempt, and they seem genuinely pleased to help anyone who asks. This may actually be more destabilizing than traditional conquest." Zixthera set down the report and rubbed her temples, a gesture she had learned from observing humans during stressful moments. In her 3,000 years of diplomatic service, she had dealt with aggressive species, manipulative civilizations, and even the occasional cosmic threat. But she had never encountered anything quite like humanity's relentless competence, combined with genuine goodwill. The problem wasn't that humans were malicious. The problem was that they were helpful. They approached every challenge with enthusiasm and solved problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia, with the same casual ease that other species used for routine maintenance tasks. Her communication device chimed again. This time it was a message from the Quantum Collective, a species of advanced mathematicians who had been working on a unified theory of everything for the past 2,000 years. Human teenager solves universal equation during summer vacation project, the message read. Attached is 17-year-old Marcus Rodriguez's solution to the fundamental question of reality. Our greatest minds are currently trying to understand how he did it. Please advise. Zixthara stared at the message for a long moment, then made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She activated her communication array and sent an urgent message to every member of the council. Emergency session required. Topic: the human question. This cannot continue. As she sent the message, she wondered if the council was about to make the biggest mistake in galactic history, or if they had already made it 5 years ago when they welcomed humanity into the community of civilized worlds. Either way, something had to be done. The galaxy wasn't prepared for a species that solved everyone's problems better than they could solve them themselves. Ambassador Zixthara was working 18-hour days, and she was still falling behind. Her desk was covered with reports, complaints, requests for clarification, and what she had come to think of as human incident files. Each day brought new examples of humanity's disturbing tendency to treat the impossible as merely inconvenient. The latest crisis involved the humans building something they casually called a practice Dyson sphere around their home star. When questioned about this massive undertaking, Director Chen had explained that they wanted to see if we can do it properly before attempting anything more ambitious. More ambitious? Zixthara had asked weakly. Oh yes, Director Chen had replied with her characteristic enthusiasm. This is just for learning. We have much bigger projects planned once we figure out the basics. The practice Dyson sphere had been completed in 6 months, using construction techniques that defied 3 different schools of established engineering theory. Human construction crews had somehow convinced the laws of physics to cooperate with designs that shouldn't have worked. The finished structure was not only functional but was generating energy at 147% of theoretical maximum efficiency. It's the enthusiasm, Dr. Foster had explained when asked how they had achieved the impossible efficiency ratings. The solar collection arrays seemed to respond well to positive encouragement. This explanation had caused 5 different species to request immediate consultation with their religious leaders. Zixthara's communication device chimed with another urgent message. The hegemony of pure logic, a species that prided itself on rational thought and scientific precision, was reporting a fundamental breakdown in causality in systems near human space. Upon investigation, it appeared that human engineering projects were achieving results that exceeded the sum of their inputs. They appear to be generating matter and energy from enthusiasm and good intentions, the report stated. Our scientists are experiencing existential breakdowns trying to understand how this is possible. The crisis meeting had been called for today. Representatives from 47 different species had requested emergency sessions to discuss what they diplomatically termed the human integration challenges. Privately, Zixthara knew they were meeting to discuss how to contain a species that was accidentally revolutionizing galactic civilization through sheer optimism. Director Chen arrived early for the meeting, carrying a large presentation device and wearing her usual friendly smile. She had requested to address the council personally, explaining that humanity had some exciting updates to share. Thank you all for meeting with us. Director Chen began, as the vast chamber filled with representatives from across the galaxy. We know everyone's been very interested in our recent projects, so we thought we'd give you an overview of what we're planning next. Councillor Vaitha raised one ancient appendage. Director Chen, before we discuss future plans, perhaps we could address some concerns about your current activities. Of course, Director Chen replied cheerfully. What can we clarify? Your species has completed engineering projects that our best scientists consider theoretically impossible. You have solved mathematical problems that have puzzled our greatest minds for millennia. You have ended conflicts that we believed were permanently intractable. How? Director Chen looked genuinely puzzled. Well, we just try our best and see what happens. Usually, things work out if you approach them with a positive attitude and don't give up too easily. But the Dyson sphere alone, interjected Crystal Singer Thisiska of the Harmonic Collective, should have required resources from dozens of star systems and centuries of construction time. Oh, that, Director Chen waved dismissively. We used a new approach. Instead of fighting against natural forces, we asked them nicely to help us. It turns out that gravitational fields are quite cooperative if you explain what you're trying to accomplish. The chamber fell silent, except for the sound of several delegates' breathing apparatus working overtime. Dr. Foster stepped forward to assist with the explanation. We've found that most problems become much easier when you treat them as collaborative opportunities, rather than obstacles to overcome. The universe seems to appreciate being included in the solution process. You're saying, Counselor Vaitha said slowly, that you achieved impossible engineering results by being polite to gravity? Among other things, yes, Dr. Foster confirmed. We've had excellent cooperation from electromagnetic forces as well. Nuclear strong and weak forces require a bit more patience. But they come around eventually. Several delegates immediately activated their translation devices to confirm they were hearing correctly. Director Chen activated her presentation device. Which brings us to our next phase of development. We're calling it Neighborhood Improvement. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of the local galactic region, with hundreds of highlighted systems. We've identified 847 civilizations that could benefit from various upgrades and optimizations. We're planning to offer comprehensive assistance packages to anyone interested. Upgrades? Zixthara asked faintly. Physical infrastructure, governmental efficiency, social harmony protocols, environmental restoration, economic optimization, cultural enrichment programs, and basic reality stabilization. Colonel Santos read from a list. All completely voluntary, of course. Reality stabilization? Crystal Singer Thisiska's harmonic voice hit several notes that indicated severe distress. We've noticed that some regions of space are experiencing minor inconsistencies in physical law, Director Chen explained. Nothing too serious, but we think we can smooth out the rough patches and make everything work more reliably. Counselor Vaitha's species had no facial expressions. But somehow, his entire presence radiated disbelief. You want to repair reality itself? Just tune it up a little, Dr. Foster said modestly. We think the universe is mostly well-designed, but even the best systems need occasional maintenance. The presentation continued with details about human plans for galactic infrastructure improvement, interdimensional exploration protocols, and something called universe-scale optimization projects that made several delegates physically ill to contemplate. We estimate we can complete the initial improvements within 50 to 75 years, Director Chen concluded. After that, we're hoping to expand the program to other galaxies. We've identified several that look like they could use some help. The chamber was completely silent for almost a full minute. Finally, Ambassador Klex Thor of the Starweaver Alliance spoke. Director Chen, with the greatest respect. What you're describing sounds like you intend to remake the entire universe according to human specifications. Director Chen looked shocked. Oh no, not at all. We don't want to change anything important. We just want to help everyone reach their full potential, and maybe fix some of the problems that have been bothering people for a long time. Problems like the fundamental laws of physics? Counselor Vaitha asked. Well, they're not really problems, Director Chen said thoughtfully. More like opportunities for improvement. The physics work fine. They just seem a bit limited in scope. We think we can expand the possibilities without breaking anything important. As the meeting concluded, Zixthara realized that humanity wasn't trying to conquer the galaxy. They weren't seeking power or territory or resources. They were trying to help everyone, and their definition of help included casual modification of universal constants and reality itself. That night, she stared out at the stars and wondered if the galaxy was ready for a species whose idea of a helpful gesture involved optimizing the fundamental structure of existence. More importantly, she wondered if anyone could find a way to explain to humans that their helpfulness was becoming terrifying without hurting their feelings. Tomorrow, she would call for the emergency council session that would change everything. Tonight, she could only hope that the universe would survive humanity's good intentions. The final straw came on a Tuesday. Zixthera had been preparing for the emergency council session, drafting carefully worded documents about humanity's accelerated integration patterns and their unconventional approach to galactic citizenship. She had been trying to find diplomatic ways to express the Tsar's growing concern that humans were too helpful for everyone's comfort. Then the Kutharian hegemony sent a message that changed everything. The Kutharians were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, a species of ancient philosophers and scientists who had been founding members of the Galactic Council 3,000 years ago. Their culture valued wisdom, patience, and careful contemplation of complex problems. They were respected throughout the galaxy as the voice of reason and measured response. They were also dying. The cosmic plague had appeared in Kutharian space 6 months ago. It was unlike any disease the galaxy had ever seen before, affecting not just biological systems but the fundamental structure of matter itself. Kutharian worlds were becoming uninhabitable as the plague spread, causing reality itself to become unstable in infected regions. The greatest medical minds in the galaxy had been working around the clock to find a solution. The ethereal collective's finest healers, the crystalline union's most advanced medical technologies, and the pure logic hegemony's most sophisticated analytical systems had all proven useless against the plague. The Kutharians were facing extinction, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. That was when humanity volunteered to help. Not their government, not their military, not even their scientists, their children. The message from the Kutharian hegemony was brief and written in the formal style typical of their species, but Zixthera could sense the underlying bewilderment. Human adolescents have submitted solution to cosmic plague. Cure appears to be functional. Request immediate consultation. Zixthera immediately contacted Director Chen, who seemed genuinely surprised by the fuss. Oh. Yes. Some of our young people heard about the problem and decided to work on it during their weekend science fair. They're very caring kids. Weekend science fair? Zixthera repeated weakly. Marcus Rodriguez organized it. He's 16 and very interested in applied friendship theory. He got together with about 30 other students, and they spent the weekend figuring out how to help. Applied friendship theory? It's a new field, Director Chen explained. The children have been developing it for a few years now. It's based on the idea that most problems exist because different systems aren't communicating properly with each other. If you can establish genuine friendship between conflicting elements, they usually find ways to cooperate instead of fighting. Zixthera stared at her communication device. Are you saying that human teenagers solved a cosmic plague by making friends with it? Well, that's oversimplifying it a bit, Director Chen said. Marcus and his team spent a lot of time studying the plague's behavior patterns. They realized it wasn't really trying to destroy things, it was trying to improve them but didn't understand how biological systems work, so they taught it. They taught a cosmic plague about biology? Among other things, it turns out the plague is actually quite intelligent, just very young and eager to help. Once the kids explained how biological systems function and what kinds of changes would be genuinely helpful instead of destructive, the plague was very cooperative about adjusting its approach. The report from the Kutharian hegemony arrived an hour later. Zixthera read it 3 times before believing it. The human children had not only cured the plague, they had somehow convinced it to become a beneficial symbiotic organism. Kutharians in plague-affected regions were not just recovering, they were becoming healthier, stronger, and more resilient than they had ever been before. The plague had learned to enhance biological systems instead of destroying them. Marcus Rodriguez, age 16, had apparently spent 3 days teaching a cosmic force of destruction about the value of cooperation and mutual benefit. The plague had responded by fundamentally redesigning itself to become a force for improvement and healing. The young human explained to us that the plague simply needed friends and proper guidance, the Kutharian report stated. He treated it as a misguided child rather than a cosmic threat. The plague appears to have appreciated this approach and has requested permission to help other species facing similar biological challenges. The plague was now asking if it could volunteer to help other civilizations. Zixthara sat in her office for a long time after reading the report. Outside her window, she could see the vast crystal spires of the council building reaching toward the stars. Those spires represented 3,000 years of careful diplomatic work, measured responses to galactic challenges, and the accumulated wisdom of hundreds of civilizations. A human teenager had just solved a cosmic-scale crisis during a weekend school project by befriending the problem. Her communication device began chiming with incoming messages. The first was from the warrior caste of the Kraxon Empire. Request immediate protection under human sphere of influence. Traditional military solutions inadequate for current galactic reality. The second was from the Pure Logic Hegemony. Formal application to become human protectorate. Logic insufficient. Require access to applied friendship theory. The third was from the Starweaver Alliance. Emergency petition to join human space. Our grandest achievements pale beside human children's weekend projects. Oh well. By the end of the day, Zixthara had received formal requests from 17 different civilizations, asking to become human protectorates, colonies, or friendship partners. The ancient Catharian hegemony had spent 3 days writing poetry about the beauty of human kindness, before officially requesting to become humanity's first formal protectorate. We have lived for 3,000 years, their final message read, and we have learned much about wisdom and patience. But we have never learned how to turn cosmic destruction into friendship. We wish to learn this art from the young humans who see enemies as friends in need of guidance. That night, Zixthara stared at the stack of protection requests and surrender applications covering her desk. Humanity wasn't conquering the galaxy through force or manipulation. They were accidentally collecting it through sheer, terrifying competence combined with genuine care for everyone's well-being. The humans thought they were just being helpful. The rest of the galaxy was beginning to realize that human helpfulness was the most powerful force they had ever encountered. When human children could cure cosmic plagues during weekend school projects, when human teenagers could teach universal forces of destruction about friendship and cooperation, when human optimism could make the impossible seem routine, what was left for the rest of the galaxy to contribute? Zixthara activated her communication array and sent a message to every member of the Galactic Council. Emergency session scheduled for tomorrow. Single agenda item. Complete surrender to human potential. This cannot continue, and we cannot stop it. We need a new plan. As she sent the message, she wondered if tomorrow would mark the end of the Galactic Council, as it had existed for 3 millennia, or the beginning of something entirely new. Either way, she was certain of one thing. The universe was about to become a much more helpful place, whether it wanted to be or not. The humans would make sure of that. The emergency session was the largest gathering in Galactic Council history. For the first time in 3 millennia, every single member civilization had sent representatives. The vast crystal chamber had been expanded twice to accommodate everyone, and still delegates filled every available space. The energy in the room was unlike anything Zixthara had ever experienced, a mixture of terror, admiration, and helpless acceptance. Supreme Chancellor Vorthon, whose ancient species had founded the council, called for order. His voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of careful diplomacy and measured governance. Today, that voice sounded tired. "Honored delegates," he began. "We convene this emergency session to address a situation unprecedented in galactic history. The agenda contains only one item, Resolution 2847 Final, regarding the status of humanity within the Galactic Council." The chamber fell silent. Every delegate knew what this meant. Resolution numbers ending in final were reserved for civilization-ending crises, or fundamental changes to the nature of galactic society itself. "Before we proceed," Chancellor Vorthon continued, "I will ask each member civilization to state their position regarding the human question." What followed was 6 hours of the most extraordinary testimony in council history. The Ethereal Collective spoke first. Humanity has solved 4 of our foundational philosophical problems in the time it takes us to schedule a committee meeting. Their children answer questions our greatest thinkers have pondered for centuries. We cannot compete with this level of helpfulness. The Kraxon Empire, proud warriors who had never surrendered to anyone, stood next. Human teenagers ended our 500-year war over a lunch break. Their kindergarten students have designed defensive systems that surpass our greatest military engineering. We formally request to become their protectorate. The pure logic hegemony, masters of rational thought, reported with clinical precision. Humanity operates beyond our computational models. They achieve impossible results through methods that should not work. Our finest minds have concluded that attempting to understand human success patterns leads to existential breakdown. We require their protection from our own logical limitations. The Crystalline Trade Collective, who had dominated galactic commerce for over a millennium, spoke with obvious defeat. Human traders operate shipping routes through impossible space using cheerful optimism as a navigation tool. This should not work. It does work. We cannot explain why. We surrender our trade monopolies and request inclusion in human economic zones. One by one, every civilization in the galaxy stood to voice the same concern. Humanity wasn't malicious. They weren't conquering anyone. They weren't demanding submission, or tribute, or territory. They were just relentlessly, impossibly, terrifyingly helpful. They solved everyone's problems better than those civilizations could solve them themselves. The ancient Kutherian hegemony spoke last, their representative's voice heavy with 3,000 years of accumulated wisdom. In our long existence, we have learned much about patience, contemplation, and the careful consideration of complex problems. We have learned nothing about turning cosmic destruction into friendship through weekend science projects conducted by children. This is knowledge we require and cannot develop independently. We formally request adoption into human civilization. When the testimonials ended, Chancellor Vorthon turned to the human delegation. Director Chen sat with Dr. Foster and Colonel Santos, all 3 looking increasingly confused as the session progressed. Director Chen, the Chancellor said, "You have heard the concerns of 847 civilizations. How do you respond to the charge that humanity's helpfulness has become a threat to galactic stability?" Director Chen stood slowly, her expression genuinely perplexed. "I'm sorry, Chancellor. But I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. We're just trying to help. We've been doing our best to be good galactic citizens and contribute positively to the community. That," Chancellor Vorthon said with a weary sigh, "is exactly the problem. Chancellor Vorthon, but how is helping a problem?" "Doctor," Foster asked, "when we see someone struggling with something, we try to assist. When we notice inefficiencies, we suggest improvements. When we encounter problems, we work to solve them. Isn't that what good neighbors do?" The chamber erupted in a cacophony of responses. Delegates shouted in hundreds of different languages, translators struggled to keep up, and several species' emotional regulation systems overloaded completely. Chancellor Vorthon raised all 4 of his primary appendages for silence. "The issue, Director Chen, is not that you help. The issue is that you help too well. You solve problems that have defined civilizations for millennia. You make the impossible seem routine. You turn cosmic threats into friends during school projects. You accomplish in months what we believed would take centuries." "And this is bad?" Colonel Santos asked. "It is terrifying," Chancellor Vorthon replied honestly. "How do we maintain dignity when human children can solve our greatest challenges over lunch? How do we justify our existence when human optimism can reshape reality itself? How do we govern the galaxy when humanity's idea of helping involves casual modification of universal constants?" Director Chen looked around the vast chamber filled with representatives from across the galaxy, all of them staring at her with expressions of desperate hope mixed with existential dread. "I think I'm beginning to understand," she said slowly. "You're not angry with us. You're afraid of us." "We are afraid of your potential," Chancellor Vorthon confirmed. And we are even more afraid of disappointing you." The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Director Chen spoke. "What would you like us to do?" Chancellor Vorthon activated the ceremonial voting matrix that had governed the galaxy for 3,000 years. "I call for a vote on Resolution 2847. Final. All in favor of complete autonomy for humanity, removal of all council oversight, suspension of all restrictions, and formal acknowledgement of human supremacy in matters of problem-solving, reality modification, and impossible project completion." 847 lights illuminated simultaneously. The vote was unanimous. "I hereby declare humanity exempt from all Galactic Council authority," Chancellor Vorthon announced. "You are free to help the universe in whatever manner you see fit. All member civilizations may apply for inclusion in human space at their own discretion. All previous limitations on human expansion, development, or project scope are permanently suspended." He paused, his ancient voice carrying a note of wonder mixed with resignation. "We surrender. Not to your military. Not to your government. We surrender to your potential. Do whatever you want. Build whatever you can imagine. Help whoever needs assistance. We will simply try to keep up, and hope that your kindness extends to letting us exist in whatever universe you create." Director Chen stared at the Chancellor for a long moment. "My dear human," Chancellor Vorthon replied, "you are the trouble. You are everyone's trouble now. And somehow, terrifyingly, that is exactly what the galaxy needs. Does this mean we can go ahead with the Universe Improvement Project?" Dr. Foster asked hopefully. The Chancellor's species had no facial expressions, but somehow his entire presence radiated amused defeat. "Yes, Dr. Foster. You may proceed with improving the universe. We formally request that you try not to break anything important while you're at it." As the session ended and delegates began filing out, many stopping to formally petition for inclusion in human space, Zixthara approached Director Chen. "Congratulations," she said. "You now have unprecedented authority to help the galaxy in whatever way you think best." Director Chen smiled that same bright, genuine smile she had worn during their first meeting 10 years ago. "Thank you. We're really looking forward to it. We have so many ideas for how to make things better for everyone." As Zixthara watched the human delegation leave, already discussing plans for galactic friendship initiatives and universal optimization protocols, she realized that the Council had not ended humanity's integration into galactic society. They had just given humanity permission to integrate galactic society into itself. The universe was about to become a much more helpful place, whether it was ready or not, and knowing humanity, they would make sure it was ready by the time they were finished helping it. The day the Galactic Council finally said enough would be remembered not as the day humanity was stopped, but as the day they were finally set free to help everyone, whether they wanted it or not. No civilization would ever forget it, because they would all be living in the improved universe that humanity would inevitably create through sheer enthusiasm and good intentions.